Hi guys, so today we are doing module 4.6 and yes, I'm wearing pajamas, but it is pajama day in school today and that's why. Alright, so today we are graphing reflections of points, and if you look at the learning target, I can recognize that the coordinates of points reflected across either axis differ by the sign of one of the coordinates. And our vocabulary is reflection. So before we go into reflections, let's quickly discuss when we had already done opposites. So if I say what is the opposite of 4? So if you think of a number line, what is in the other direction of 0 on the number line? So that would be -4. So same distance from 0 on the number line, but on opposite sides. And that is basically what a reflection is. Now, when we are using a coordinate graph, all right, so we are going to do a reflection on this, and a reflection is the mirror image produced by flipping a figure across a line. All right, so the mirror image can be flipped across the y-axis, and this is y, okay, or it can be flipped across the x-axis. So it can be flipped across either the x or the y-axis depending on what the question is asking you. All right, so let's say I give you a point and I say -2, 3. So x, you have -2 and then you have 3 over here. So I'm going to plot it like this. All right, so if I have -2, 3, and let's call this A, and my ordered pair is -2, 3. All right, now if I am going to try to reflect this over the y-axis, remember reflection is a mirror image, and if I'm saying the y-axis, you need to remember one thing. If I am flipping it across the y-axis, my y coordinate is going to stay the same. What's the y coordinate? This is y, right? And x is always the first and y is always the second. So if I am flipping across the y-axis, my y coordinate stays the same and my x becomes the opposite sign. So what is the opposite of -2? It's going to be 2, and y is going to stay the same, which is 3. So if I'm reflecting on the y-axis, look, this is the y, right? So I am going to take this and it's going to be same distance but on the other side of the y-axis. So it's going to be 2 and we go up here, which is 3. All right, so this is 2, 3, and look, this is my, once again, my y stays the same because this is x and this is y, and the x becomes the opposite sign. So of -2, the opposite sign is a +2. So now you can see that both of these are the same distance on the other side of the y-axis, and that's what a reflection is. All right, now the reflection across the line, it is normally shown, if this is A, it's written like this. This means reflection. All right, and yeah, so this is A and reflection of that is written like this. So this is on the y-axis. All right, now what about if I was reflecting it on the x-axis? So if I was reflecting on the x-axis, my x would remain the same and the sign of y would flip. So let's say I'm taking this and I'm reflecting it on the x-axis. Now we know this is x. So I said the x would be the same. So if x is the same, what is x? Which is -2. So this is here and y will flip, it will become -3. Okay, so here is a reflection on the x-axis. All right, so this would be -2, x stays the same, and then -3 because y is flipping. All right, so once again, when I am reflecting on the y-axis, the ordered pair or the point is going this way from side to side, okay? But when I am flipping it over the x-axis, my point is going up or down. So up or down, because this is the x-axis. So it's going to move this way or this way. All right? And for y, it's going to move from here to here, side to side. All right? So that's one visual that I really wanted you to have. So let's talk about identifying reflections of points across the x-axis. So if I give you a point, and I'm going to erase this. Let's say I give you an ordered pair of -3, 1/2, -3, 1/2, and I give you 2. All right? And then I ask you to reflect this. This is A, okay? And I ask you to reflect this over the x-axis. So let's see what the reflection of this is going to be. So first I'm going to go and plot it. Okay, so I have -3, 1/2, which is here. All right, and then I have 2. So I know it's going to fall in quadrant 2 just by looking at those signs that I have here. So -3 1/2, and this goes up like this, and here is my 2, and where they meet, and this is my point A, which is my -3, 1/2, and 2. Okay, and now when I'm saying that this needs to be reflected on the x-axis, remember what I said? X will stay the same. X will stay the same if I'm reflecting on the x-axis, and the y, the sign will flip. Sign will flip. Okay, so that means it's going to be -3, 1/2. And what is the opposite of +2 is -2. So that's what my new ordered pair is going to be, and the reflection is going to fall. See, x is same, so -3, 1/2, and then it's going to go this way because it's set on the x-axis, and so it's going from top to bottom. All right, and so here is my reflection, which is written like that, and it is -3, 1/2, and we have -2. So that is a reflection on the x-axis. All right. Now, once again, please remember, when a point is reflected across the x-axis, the x-coordinate always stays the same and the y-coordinates are opposite. Okay. Now, let's do one, and I'm just going to take you to my whiteboard for this one so that we can quickly do some reflections. And hold on. Okay, so let me go to this one here, and I'm just going to show you this, and we're going to do some graphing on this and then do the reflections. So let's say I give you some points. All right, and let me first label this. This is 0 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. On the top we have positives, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we have negatives down. Okay, so once we have this labeled, and let's say I have a point which is 1, 3. So if I have 1, 3, I know that is positive, positive, so it's going to fall in quadrant 1. So here's 1, here's 3, and I have this over here. This is my ordered pair. Okay, and if I am going to reflect, this is A. All right, so if I'm going to reflect this on the x-axis, we know that this is the x-axis. So I know it's going to go from top to down or bottom to up depending on where the points are. So it is going to go across the x-axis. All right, and the same distance on the other side of the x. So if it's going on the x-axis, what happens? The x-coordinate stays the same. So it's going to be still 1. X is going to stay the same, and we're going to have the reverse of 3, which is going to be -3. So if I am reflecting it, here is 1, and I have -3, and this is my ordered pair, which is a reflection on the x-axis. So let's do another point, and I'm going to use a different color so you can see. All right. So if I give you a point which is -2, -2. All right. So if I have -2 here, here's -2, right? So this is -2 and -2. And it's asking me to reflect it on the x-axis. So if I'm reflecting it on the x-axis, it's going from the bottom to the top, is going over the x. X is going to stay the same. So that's why -2 is going to still stay -2. And I'm going to do the opposite of -2 for the y, which is +2. So here is my reflection. It goes from -2, which is the same, and it goes up to +2. So here is my reflected ordered pair over the x-axis. All right. We can do another reflection, which is going across. Now this was on the x. Now let's see what if I'm just going to take these same things and if I'm going to reflect it across on the y. So let's say this was A, and let's say this was B. All right. And now I'm going to reflect it on the y-axis. So let me go ahead and just remove this one, because I am now going into the y-axis. All right, and I'm going to remove this one. All right, and here we go. This was -2, -3, -4. All right, so now what I'm going to do is, instead of the x, I'm going to reflect on the y-axis. All right, and if I am reflecting on the y-axis, remember it's going from side to side. And in the y-axis, if I'm reflecting it, my y stays the same. So in the y, if you're reflecting on the y stays the same. And the x coordinate sign will switch. The x coordinate sign switches. Okay, so let's look at this one. If I have this point, I have ordered pair 1, 3, and it's saying to reflect it on the y-axis. This is my y. Okay, so my y stays the same. So 3 is going to stay the same. And look at what is the opposite of 1. It is -1. So look, this is going to become -1 and 3. So this is my reflection on the y-axis. So look, the 3 and 3, the y stays the same, and the 1 has switched to -1, and look, there's the same distance on both sides of the y. So that's a reflection. Let's reflect -2, -2 on the y-axis. So what's the y over here? It is -2. So my y coordinate is going to stay the same. But my x is going to switch to a +2. So if I'm reflecting it here, +2 and -2. So therefore, here is my reflection over the y-axis. So look, once again, the y stays the same, the x sign switches. All right, so that's how you reflect on the y-axis. All right, now let's do a problem. One more. Let's say Kendall is building a square fence. Okay, she's building a square fence, and she places fence posts at the locations indicated on the grid. So let's see, she is going to, let's look at this one. All right, so what location is she putting on the grid? And we are trying to see what is the location of the post that reflects S negative 2, 2 across the y-axis. I'm just going to show this to you because I just kind of showed you what reflections are. So if I move this out of the way, okay, I'm going to pull this down a little bit. So let's look at that one. And then I'm showing you the reflection over here also. So we are finding the point on the grid that is the same distance from the y-axis as the original point. And then we're going to graph the point and we are going to label it. So if I have a square thing that is being created over here, a square fence posts are being placed in a square fence. So I was given negative 2, 2. It's asking me to graph the reflection across the y-axis. So here is my y-axis. So remember, y is going to stay the same. So 2 is going to stay the same. And I'm going to do the opposite of negative 2, which is x, which becomes positive 2. So my reflection becomes 2, 2. All right, so once again, when the point is reflected across the y-axis, the y-coordinate stays the same and the x-coordinates are opposites. Okay, and then let's do one last thing. And we are going to identify the axis of reflection. All right, so let me go to my last problem over here. Let's look at this one. And okay, all right, so the point A, negative 2, 3/4 and negative 4, the reflection, that's the reflection, okay, is the result of reflecting A, 2, 3/4 and negative 4 on the coordinate plane. Identify the axis across which the point was reflected. So we can look at this and we can look at the x and the y coordinate. All right, so we're going to look at the x and the y coordinate. So this is a reflection. This is x, this is y. This is x and this is y. So as we can see that y is the same. Y is the same. That means it is reflecting on the y-axis. You're looking at the two of them which are the same. That means like whether it's both x's are the same or both y's are the same. If both x's were the same, it would be reflecting on the x-axis. But since both y's have the same sign, that means it's being reflected on the y-axis. And you can see that the 2 and 3/4 has changed to negative 2 and 3/4, and so therefore that x has changed. All right, so because the x coordinates are opposite and the y coordinates are the same, the point A was reflected across the y-axis. All right, and then let's just do one last point over here to identify as to where it is reflecting. So let's look at this one. The point M, with the reflection is 2 1/3 and you have negative 1, is the result of reflecting M, which is negative 2 and 1/3 and negative 1 in the coordinate plane. So identify the axis across which the point was reflected. So when I'm looking at this, what do I see? I see that the y coordinates are the same. They are both negative 1. All right, and the x coordinates are the opposite because this is negative 2 and 1/3 and that is a positive 2 and 1/3. So because the y coordinates are the same, the point A was the point M was reflected across the y axis. All right, so that is the most important thing to remember with reflections. In this lesson, please remember that any form of reflection, it's a mirror image. Think about when you're standing in front of the mirror, your reflection is the same distance from the mirror that you are standing, right? So in the same way, in the graphs also, you're reflecting either over the x-axis or over the y-axis. And all you have to do is look at the ordered pair, and whichever one, if x is the same, and y is the opposite, that means it's reflected over the x-axis. On the other hand, if y is the same and the x coordinate is opposite signs, then it's reflected over the y-axis. So it depends on which one is the same. And that's all it is in graphing reflections of points. All right, have a nice day, everyone.